Welcome to Hope for Your Pelvic Floor, the podcast where we explore how you can transform the way you move, feel, and live. I'm Claire Sparrow, your host, Pilates teacher and educator, best-selling author, and a woman passionate about helping you rediscover what's possible. I believe that when we reclaim our pelvic health, we reclaim our power. This is your space for optimism, possibility, and practical steps to move from feeling helpless to hopeful. Here we dive into empowering conversations about pelvic health, movement, and wellness. Whether you're on a journey to regain strength, confidence, or simply looking for a path to hope and possibility, this space is for you. Join me as I break down the myths, share tangible tools, inspiring stories, and expert insights to guide you towards a body that supports you for life. Because you are not meant to settle, you are meant to thrive. This is Hope for Your Pelvic Floor. Let's get started. In this episode, I will share with you the one singular thing that made the biggest difference to my pelvic floor. But first, I'm going to share a little bit about my story, how I overcame postnatal depression and prolapse, and it's not what you expect. I know because I felt the same way that many of you will have either tried Kegels or perhaps you've downloaded the Squeezy app and you keep maybe thinking you'll do it. I'll get round to it. I'm meaning to do my pelvic floor exercises, but you forget. Or maybe you do it sitting at the traffic lights, you squeeze and you hold it, or you lift it up the elevator, all the different levels. Or when you do it, maybe you're not really sure if you're doing it right. So I know exactly all of those situations, all of those feelings, because I felt exactly the same way at different stages during my pelvic health journey, which really is my whole life. It's your whole life. I always say, wherever you go, your pelvic floor is with you. And I say that with a bit of tongue in cheek, but it's really true. And the truth of it is, for me, I don't think I'd really considered my pelvic floor until something happened to it. And that's back in time in 2005 when I gave birth to my first child. I kind of just thought I was really strong and that was all that mattered. I'd always been strong, I'd always been physically fit, I'd been a dancer, I was doing lots of Pilates all the way through, I was doing aquarobics 3 or 4 times a week, I was at the gym, I was the one there standing on the giant gym ball doing my weights. When I think back now, it's absolute crackers. And no, I wasn't standing on the ball when I was pregnant, but before that, I was definitely standing on the ball doing my weights. And I really just thought strength was all that mattered. It was all I ever really heard of in general, not really just in relation to pelvic floor. And so it just wasn't on my radar. Nobody talked to me about pelvic floor. There had maybe been little glimmers of it back in my dance career, but it was never really emphasized greatly. And yeah, generally, I was strong and I felt that that was all that mattered. And then that strength, that actual inability to function the way that our bodies are designed to function, where there's both strength and flexibility, there's a dynamism. What happened in my birth was my pelvic floor was so strong, it didn't have the elastic nature that it needed to stretch and lengthen to give birth to my son. What resulted then was in having an episiotomy and tearing. An episiotomy, for those of you who don't know, that's where there's a small cut done to help to open up the space to let baby pass. So I had both those things. I had the double whammy. I was cut and I tore. And I share this because I think we are still living in a culture and a bias towards strength, whether we're talking about pelvic floor or not. Our whole entire body is designed to be dynamic and flexible. And when we focus only on one thing, we're not then able to function as we are designed. So that was really the first instance where I was like, okay, that's something down there that I need to deal with. And I think I was even given a little pamphlet about pelvic floor exercises. But, those of you that have had children, you're not really thinking about anything else but kind of survival and keeping this tiny little baby alive because it's like a huge life-changing event. And it isn't about you in that moment in time. It's hard to notice what's going on with you. And even when you go for your 6-week check, I remember thinking, I actually don't know what side's up. I just couldn't really answer in a sensible or knowledgeable way if I was okay or not okay. So I think that that initial exercise pamphlet, it just got put in the red book in the baby's book and just was left to one side. And I think when I'm honest about it, not long after that, I started to recognize that things felt different, but there wasn't a great reference point. I hadn't looked down there before. So afterwards, I wasn't going to look and then know if things were different or not different. So I recommend to all women at all stages of life to get a mirror out and check so you know what your normal is, so that if there's change, you know what that change is. And then, after I started to think, oh, so it's maybe not right, I'm not sure. It was also coupled with a deep, deep low that was so much more than baby blues. And it was very difficult to get out of the house. It was very difficult to understand what my baby needed, let alone what I needed. And my amazing, incredible health visitor suggested that I get some support. And it turned out it was postnatal depression. And not only did I get talk therapy, which was incredible for me at the time, she also suggested that I do movement, I do exercise. She said to me that as a movement teacher, an exercise professional, she said, that exercise is going to make you feel better. You know what to do. And I don't think I'd really even considered exercising up until that point. And then exercise became really as important as the therapy that I was having. It became a critical part of the healing process for me mentally. And then, of course, time went by and my pelvic floor really wasn't on my radar because I was exercising, doing general Pilates that I was aware of and understood at the time. And then fast forwards to around 2015, 2016, I had had two more babies and very different birth experiences. I learned about perineal massage, which is an absolute game changer to help to create the flexibility in the tissue of the pelvic floor and the perineum so that it was easier for me to birth my other two beautiful boys. So in that 2015, 2016 time, I started to go a lot deeper into the study of anatomy. I'd done lots of anatomy before. I had done further Pilates training in this interim time, but this amazing anatomy teacher, Gary Carter, opened my eyes to connective tissue. He opened my eyes to the model of biotensegrity or tensegrity, the idea of everything being connected to everything, and as one thing moves, everything is affected by that one movement. And one other major thing was the connection and relationship of the feet up into the pelvis. And these were real eye openers for me. And as a naturally curious person and somebody who always asks why, my granny would attest to that, that I always needed to know more. I wanted to know why. And also because I grew up with women like my granny and my great aunt and lots of incredible women who never really settled for anything. They always asked for more. They always looked for what was possible. Even the men in my life, that my granddad and his best friend, who could just make something out of nothing. They could fix anything with anything. And that belief, that kind of understanding and desire to look for a possibility made me come back to revisit what was going on with the pelvic floor. And so I'm in this process of learning and inquiry, and then I discover that I have a large cyst on my left ovary. And when I say large, we're talking grapefruit sized. And the grapefruit was so big that it was hiding a small satsuma sized cyst behind it. These were palpable. You could see them when I lay down, this sticky out bulge. And I guess I probably had sensed that they were there. I'd maybe felt them a little bit, but I wasn't really inquiring to do anything about it. And then they became really, really noticeable. I was getting issues with my bladder because, like, I would be going to the toilet all the time, and I knew that it wasn't my pelvic floor because I wasn't leaking. I was just going every hour. And it was because these giant cysts were pressing down on my bladder from the inside, meaning that it just didn't have enough space to fill up and hold it. The reserve was being pressed upon. So, joy of joys, I went to hospital and they thought that they could remove it by keyhole until they realized that it was grapefruit size and had a little mini friend behind it. So I had to go ahead and have full-blown abdominal surgery, bit like a C-section, so down just sort of bikini line cut. And it's, yeah, I'm still, I think, as I say it, I'm still kind of annoyed and kind of frustrated to have gone through that experience of having three vaginal deliveries and then the equivalent of a C-section to get these big cyst babies out. And they were benign, there was no issue, there was no worry, but they needed to come out because of the pressure on my bladder and the long-term issues that that could cause, and also because they could rupture and cause all sorts of other things which we wouldn't want. So they had to come out. So, of course, I then had to recover from abdominal surgery. And not long after that, I really started to feel some difference in my pelvic floor. I felt like there was something kind of where it shouldn't be. And I went and had a physio assessment, and it was the most heartbreaking, heart-wrenching experience to go and have this diagnosis that I had pelvic organ prolapse. And she was brilliant, very reassuring. It was very mild, and really, what I was doing with Pilates would be all that I would need to do. And oh, it was it didn't stop it feeling like it really stung because I was strong, I was fit, I was doing the right thing. I felt like I was doing the right thing. But unfortunately, the right thing wasn't enough. I needed to know more, I needed to learn more, I needed to explore really what else could be done. Um, and it's so crazy because even although I did already have some knowing, I panicked. I panicked and thought, well, I've been doing Pilates all these years. I know what I'm doing, but I still felt like I should do Kegels, which is so cringy now that I think about it. I'm like embarrassed to say it, but I felt like everybody was saying, the physio was saying it, everywhere you looked at and you research prolapse, everywhere says do Kegels, do strength-based exercises, pull it up this level, pull it up that level, hold at the traffic lights, all of these things. And so I thought, well, maybe that's what I have to do then. Unfortunately, I did the Kegels and it made my prolapse worse. It made my symptoms worse. I could feel it more. I started to have pain. All sorts of other things came about when I started to do the Kegels. So, yeah, that was not really the outcome I was hoping for. It wasn't what I was looking for. But I think I needed to go through all of this process to start to really inquire and understand um, that there has to be another way, that just because everywhere says do strength exercises doesn't mean that that is right, that there has to be more. And I'm not saying that we don't need to do strength. Like I said, our body functions with strength and flexibility. It's the importance of having it all, not just doing strength. And also, most importantly, is having a solid foundation that you're building on. If you have a shaky foundation, which I did, and I didn't know at the time, and then since found out that the scar tissue from both the episiotomy, from the tear, and it was the surgery in my abdomen that pushed it all over the edge, because that all started to pull on one side, which was the cause of the displacement of the organ. So there was a vulnerability there because I had the pelvic floor scar tissue, and then add on top of that scar tissue in my abdomen. It was just the straw that broke the camel's back, as they say. So I knew at that point that I really had to change. I had to change what was happening. I had this glimmer of hope because of the anatomy training that I'd been doing. I had this glimmer of hope because I knew that I was very determined and I was not going to settle for where I was. So with that I went into researching and studying even more and starting on myself. And what I really wanted to share about my story today is this very piece, that my symptoms began to improve immediately, literally immediately, when I decided. When I changed my mindset from feeling defeated, feeling helpless, feeling like I should do what the doctor said, which was to accept it, to accept that I had three children, that this is what I should expect to happen, that it was just part of life. These are things that I wasn't prepared to accept. I shifted in that moment my mindset from that defeated acceptance and helplessness to a belief that I could learn a new way, I could create a new way, I could choose to improve my prolapse and my pelvic floor symptoms. And the sense of relief, knowing that there was a glimmer of hope, knowing that I had, with my anatomy training, started to see the connection between the foot and the pelvis. I could see that it wasn't just the pelvic floor's responsibility, that it wasn't just about strong versus weak, that actually it was about whole body function and about rebalancing and about that foundation, that I could learn ways, I could create ways to rebalance, to work on that foundation and create an opportunity for healing naturally. So, as we wrap up this little Meet Me, your host, Claire Sparrow episode, I wanted to leave you with that that there is hope. And the first step, the singular thing that can make the biggest difference to you today is literally just your belief. Shifting your mindset to believe that there is hope for your pelvic floor, that you can take back control, that you don't need to accept anything, that even a small change is possible, if not an enormous change. There is hope. So I'd love to hear your stories of hope. I'd love to hear what perhaps you can think of as an affirmation of hope, what your desire for hope is. Is there a goal that you have? Because what we believe is really possible will help us to achieve that desired result. At least 80% of what we believe is more likely to help you achieve that desired goal. So, I'm your host, Claire Sparrow, and I want to say you deserve more from your pelvic floor, your body, and your life. And I'm your voice of hope, here to help you reclaim it. One breath, one movement, and one choice at a time. See you in the next episode.